Joining us and who's been giving us this message ever since the platform's been going is our next guest, leading economic, political, financial commentator, Craig Stobo. He joins us now. I guess you would have enjoyed Judith Collins chastising the social science academics for not actually contributing to the productivity of this country, Craig.
Well, it raises questions around allocation of our scarce taxpayer money, doesn't it? And do those research projects produce new ideas, or can you commercialise those ideas? So it sounds like someone's decided to go through that with a fine-tooth comb and say, what's the purpose of the fund? So there's certainly a blue sky element, obviously, and a large number of university and other researchers depend on those grants each year. But I think it should be clearly signalled that it's contestable, but also the ideas are contestable. So good on her for having a good hard look at it.
Okay, listen. The other thing that happened this week, and I haven't raised it with you prior to me talking to you now, but there was a interview with Adrian Orr, and he has been very much seen by many, and I'm interested in your view on this, Craig, as being one of the people who seems to have escaped proper scrutiny for the role that he played, A, during the COVID inquiry, and B, subsequently with monetary policy. What's your particular view of Adrian Orr's governorship of the Reserve Bank?
Well, he's independent. He does now report to a board, and so the accountability for his performance, like the accountability of executives at the Financial Markets Authority, the other regulator that I chair, is a function of the board. So I think you turn your mind to the board and their assessment of his performance. That'd be my first stop. In terms of his, it's a unique role. He leads the Monetary Policy Committee, which has others that are on that. There are commentators in the market, probably better qualified than I to opine on his performance. But I would say, for whatever reason, his term was rolled over for another 5 years. Did that get cross-party consent for that to happen? Because you need the support of both sides, both parties. You need major parties because you want to be independent. Ultimately, those terms that governors have, as is any CEO, will be judged always in hindsight. And the issues on the table are, did that Monetary Policy Committee foresee back in 2021 how quickly inflation would rise from whatever source, offshore and onshore, and the need to raise rates faster than they did? I mean, I think Norway, Iceland rose or increased their rates much faster than we did. Yeah. So the question is, could they have done a better job? So what was the information they had at the time, and could they have done a better job? And that's the criticism, I think, that's been, constructively and otherwise, that's being debated right now. Because we're left with headline inflation at 2.2, but the non-tradables are still floating around. The last number was closer to 5%. So it's not imported inflation that's the issue right now. It's the composition of headline inflation driven by service sector non-tradables, which is not imported, it's domestically generated inflation.
So can I clarify this then? So Adrian Orr exists as not an independent beast now, you're saying to me. He has to respond.
Prior, there was a direct line from the Minister of Finance to the Governor.
Yeah.
Now the MPC committee and the Governor reports to the board, and the board was put in place with different accountabilities and different responsibilities in the last 2 or 3 years. So the first port of call is the board for accountability, but he is appointed by the Minister of Finance. So it is an independent role.
Is it an independent role, a bit like the police commissioner, that you're independent statutorily and in terms of sort of formal relationship, but you'd be bloody stupid to ignore the concerns expressed by the minister of the day?
Well, yeah, I think that you'll find the police commissioner does have operational independence, and
Yes, he does.
politicians are wary about stepping across that line. Similarly, for Adrian, the difference is that the Reserve Bank has a board of directors that sits in between ministers and Adrian, so it's slightly different from the police commissioner.
So Adrian Orr, but Adrian Orr he was reappointed to his job, his 5 years job. That was during COVID, wasn't it?
I think it was at the
At the fag end of it.
2022 from memory,
yeah. And I wasn't aware that there was cross-party support for that at the time.
Well, that's the question on the table, and I can't recall the details around whether that's the case. But if there's division, I mean, you kind of tread carefully, don't you? And I just can't recall the background.
Okay, all right. Now, the other thing, that conversation I had right at the start about Mississippi and GDP and making that comparison with New Zealand, is that a reflection on the incredible strength of the US economy, or is that a reflection on, gee, we're not doing so well, or both?
Yeah, I had a look at GDP by state in the US, and I thought a better comparison would be with a state with roughly the same population and roughly the same GDP, and that state's actually Oklahoma. It's what they call a flyover state, so it's not one that is on the main airline routes, but it's got 4 million people. GDP is about the same as ours. The differences are stark elsewhere, though. The industries are, gas, huge maintenance, aircraft maintenance business in Tulsa. It has major companies like Boeing and others down there. But what strikes me about that state is the median house price is in New Zealand dollars $400,000, and ours is just over $900,000.
Yeah.
Their
is that 400,000 New Zealand dollars? Are you saying, or 400,000?
New Zealand.
Bloody hell!
Dollars.
Bloody hell!
And their growth rate over the last 5 years is 3.9%. And this is a state that's just above Texas, right? So it's in the Midwest, so to speak. But what's really impressive is their productivity. Their productivity in the September quarter or year was plus 2%. That's outstanding. Every little wee amount counts, and we're sitting at 1.3% or less. And then you go up much higher and look at the US as a whole, and they've had 2.2% productivity growth in the September quarter, and over the 5 years plus 1.8. Much stronger than us. So you sort of say to yourself, gee, we are missing a trick around productivity. So in the US, in that September period, output rose 3.5%, and labour hours worked rose 1.2. So you 1.2% extra hours, but the output increases 3.5%. That's productivity. And we've got to do something better in New Zealand around the way we work, the way we combine capital, technology, land and labour. We've got to find better ways of doing things so we can do things much smarter. So, I think we've got a lot to learn from the US around their productivity. And to be fair, manufacturing productivity is not as strong as services productivity, and they have a massive advantage in technology. And the way they're rolling out technology, and we need to adopt that here faster than we are at the moment.